Thank you, everyone. Welcome. Really appreciate the time today and join us in this conversation. And welcome to Revolutionizing Conversational Commerce and AI in a headless and composable ecosystem. I'm Stephen Larson. I'm the VP of Partnerships. I'm really excited to have you here today. And I'm really excited to introduce you, more excited to introduce you to our two speakers. Michael Georges is the Senior Director of AI at Applied Digital. He helps clients leverage the latest AI to solve real-world problems, with thinking through their client needs and applying AI. And then Varun Naira is a head of value engineering at Netlify. He leads the strategic development of composable solutions that drive measurable business value through innovation and scalable digital experiences. Combined, they have decades of experience and really should be able to guide us through a very valuable discussion today. So with that, I hand over to Michael and to get started. Over to you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so just briefly a little bit more about myself. So yeah, my role at Applied Digital, I focus on looking at the latest in AI and figuring out how we can use it to create compelling use cases for our clients. Before Apply, I led advanced analytics and product development at an AI startup where we helped retailers fine-tune their promotions. And before that, I was at Bain and also have a PhD from MIT. So in terms of the topics for today, what we thought we'd do is start off with a little motivation. So we're going to look at some of the gaps in the customer and operator experience. Then we're going to use that to motivate composability and work towards composable commerce. Then we're going to look at conversational chat. We're going to look at the evolution of chat, build up some of the key ingredients, and work towards a demo and case study. And then from there, we're going to pull everything all together and look at a solution designed for conversational commerce and end with a little bit of, how do you get started and Q&A. So, yeah, at Apply, we continue to hear from our clients that there are a few big opportunities to drive differentiation in commerce. Firstly, personalization. How do you create tailored recommendations and personalized support? So we talk about a personalization maturity model where you're moving from one-to-all communication to one-to-one hyper-personalization and even a cohort of one, where you're really trying to understand each consumer on an individual level. Next is real-time interactions, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's about fast answers on products, recommendations, and support. And then third, a great omni-channel experience for customers where you're ensuring that the experience is the same, whether you're browsing at home on your laptop via the web or in-store and mobile. So, I recently bought a shirt over the weekend. I started by looking at various shirts on my laptop, but I then used an app to check out in the store to get a discount. So all these systems need to be connected. And then shifting over to the operator experience, there's two big differentiators that keep coming up. So one is a strong data foundation. At Apply, we talk about collect, unify, and activate. Collect is getting the data that you need. Unifying is making sure that you have a single source of truth. And then activating is about how do you understand and dynamically respond to changes in customer behavior. And then scale, operation, and maintenance is, again, what it sounds like. It's about deploying quickly, iterating quickly, and focusing your efforts on strategic improvements instead of maintaining legacy systems. So I'm going to hand it over to Varun here to lead us into the composability part. And Varun, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I've been really looking forward to this one. And I'll tell you why. So I've come from almost 2 decades of, experience in the digital space, mostly helping customers go through digital transformation, always kind of trying to harness the value from tech modernization. And I've seen like content and commerce and B2B, B2C, a lot of these ecosystems, how they have chosen to modernize and at what speed and how's that evolution sort of happened over the last almost 2 decades. Especially the last decade has been pretty insightful, and the last three years there's been a ridiculous level of innovation in commerce. But to kind of bring it back to we're talking to you here about conversational commerce. but we're talking about it in a composable ecosystem. So if you think about a composable ecosystem, well, where does composable even come from? Why are we even talking about composable commerce? Hopefully this will kind of start to give you a view of like, how do we even get here? And I think the important thing in what Michael just covered, which I really like, is if you want to be truly composable and you're looking at commerce as total experience, you're not just focused on customer experience. You have to bring along the operator experience. It's the operators who run the storefront, who run that e-commerce experience. If they are able to do their jobs really, really well, then that customer experience excellence shows up to their customers across all these channels. But to get us going here, right? I think the evolution of just overall customer experience, especially in commerce, started with what we knew about a decade ago, where everybody was just like, hey, can I add to cart? Can I check out? And can I place my orders? And commerce was just like this big box with a storefront, but there were always APIs available. There were always services. There's always a data repository, but a lot of that was kind of like hosted like on private cloud, right? And then, Azure, AWS kind of really changed a lot of that to where, and we saw this advent of DXPs kind of encroach upon the commerce space. So we got into this whole thing about experience-led commerce. And this was like the advent of going headless, to say, well, if I can combine my marketing efforts and my merchandising efforts, and I can kind of create this, either it's a portal experience or a B2C storefront experience, I can start to decouple my CX and still have this DXP commerce APIs, but I can do like this private versus public, just pick and choose whether I'm SAP plus a CMS or however I wanted to do, but it was starting to become more experience-led. That then kind of brought us into this race of where you would see the retailers, the fast adopters, the more advanced commerce companies that were really going all in on microservices, because they said, well, our tech proliferation is so much that we have so many systems, and for them all to work together, we think microservices works well. And that gave us, still headless and the ability to compose all these things. But there was one issue with this. When you went into microservices, you were all in on technology first, and it was, an engineer's paradise. But what about the non-engineers, the sales reps, the customer service reps? What about the merchandisers and marketers? They started to lose control over customer experience. So a new paradigm started to emerge to say, well, if we just park technology for a second and we just kind of focus on, the core capabilities that really drive any commerce experience, everything from, asset management to search, product discovery, cart, checkout, payment, can all these be considered these core capabilities that really come together as needed to fulfill a function or a need or a portion of the customer experience? So this honeycomb starts to come together to say, what is the glue that brings it all together? But now we can bring the whole organization together. The operators and the customers can come together, right? And now we're saying there are no barriers. It's always going to be a hybrid cloud. It doesn't matter where you host, where you build, where you deploy, but we can service everybody. So whether you're a marketer and you're focused on creating awesome content and marketing content, or you're a salesperson and you care about pricing and recommendations and upsell, or if you're merchandising and of course, again, things like promotions and pricing, you start to see this overlapping set of capabilities. So this is where we see composable commerce kind of come in and say, well, we got, customer service and sales all working off of the same core set of features. And now there can be platforms that power these features, but bringing this to, let's say, conversational commerce. Now, what we're expecting is that when we are able to drive this composability, we're reducing redundancy, we're increasing speed to market, we are eliminating these data silos, we are future-proofing, and we're building this excellent way of doing online ordering, right? How do you then say, well, where's the place of conversational commerce? Where did this even arrive? Why is it important for us to say, well, can I just speak to an entity and conduct commerce without having to browse and click and look up and log in and log out and follow up and emails? How do I make that more real-time interaction and ability to conduct commerce. That means all of these capabilities, as they're powered in a browser, in a site or a storefront, how does that work in a conversation? So that's the part I think we're going to dive into next. I think, right, Michael? I think you're going to tell us more about how we bring this composability in action in conversational commerce.
Yeah, that's right. I can pick up from here. So if you go to the next slide, yeah, it's just, as Varun mentioned, chat has, for a long time been thought of as something that could connect the capabilities that were shown in that honeycomb. But I think what we've seen is that it's only been the most recent generations of chat and language that have been able to kind of unlock this. So historically, if we think about kind of traditional chats, the chat that we know from kind of the last 10 years or so, these chat agents were built with, structured scripts, fixed responses, and that's what kind of drove the kind of very narrow and generic conversations. Information retrieval was also limited. You could only bring in information through kind of the right points in the templates through variables. And as a result, these systems weren't very, scalable or easy to enhance or modify. I think what we've seen with Gen AI is that there's a much bigger opportunity for more advanced personalization. So, I think we've seen that agents can be given, high-level direction on how to run a conversation.
Sorry.
Yeah,
please
no problem.
Keep going. Yeah.
High level direction on how to run a conversation, but be able to adapt and tailor and personalize as the conversation runs based on what the user's saying or past interaction or other data. Another thing that this latest generation of agents can do is bring in very dynamic and factual responses so they can access latest and most relevant and accurate information and bring it into the conversation through retrieval augmented generation. We're going to talk about that in a couple slides. And then lastly, this modern era of language models are built for scale. So they're built for the cloud and from a use case standpoint can easily accommodate new scenarios without kind of intensive reprogramming of the templates, maybe with a little bit of prompt engineering, if nothing else. So what we're going to do over the next couple slides is start to build up and work towards a demo. If you can advance the slide when you get a second. Yeah. So the starting point for most teams is going to be a simple standalone agent, basically just a language model and not much else. So, an agent like this, if we're looking at the conversation on the left, can start a conversation with a, somewhat generic opening and then respond to the user conversationally, but really only leverage information that was cooked into the agent or cooked into the language model during training. This might have been months ago. And this is how, as a result, sometimes I think we've seen you can end up with perhaps some nonsensical recommendations. So this example of, a product recommendation agent recommending, shoes that aren't sold by that retailer is something that you might see if you're not connecting to the product catalog. So on the right, as we go, I'm highlighting some of the composable capabilities Varun introduced earlier. Here, yes, there's personalization and, arguably recommendations as well, although they're not very good yet. So I think on the next slide, we'll see how we can start to build towards a more robust system. So in this next enhancement, we start to see where some of the other components of the Gen AI family come into play. For example, embedding models and vector databases. So in these architectures, the agent is still, handling the conversation with the user. It's still responsible for that, but it now knows at the appropriate point in the conversation when it should make a request out to a product catalog and then come back with a recommendation. So the magical step here is that the language model is taking the user's description of what they're looking for and essentially transforming it into a concise product description that it will search the product catalog for. And that's what's happening in this query step in the lower center. And it's the vector database, which is holding this product catalog, that allows you to find the product that's the closest match based on the description. So all of this together is what's called retrieval augmented generation, and it's how you start to ground your agents in knowledge and facts and start to activate information that's stored in other parts of your composable architecture. This could be a DAM or a CMS or a PIM. Now that we've introduced some of the core concepts, I wanted to share a demo of a recent work at Applied Digital. So this is a conversational AI search prototype that is a shopping agent that's helping, in this case, a parent shop for back to school for their child. So you can see that the agent is guiding the conversation with some loose direction, but also able to respond to the shopper as they're giving their input, and ultimately taking all the information in the session and working towards a recommendation. One thing I thought that is worth calling out in this demo is you'll see that the conversational search doesn't need to just run on typed text. We've been experimenting a lot from a UI UX perspective with buttons and other selections to get more velocity and quicker capture of the user input, but still leveraging the contextual nature of the search, still letting the user describe what they're looking for and then going and finding the best match. So these are the types of experiences that we're focused on headed into 2025. And then lastly, so up to this point, we've introduced a few of the key components to building a RAG system. And I think the really nice thing is once you have those components established, you can really start to build on it and extend in a really composable way. So it would be very straightforward to take the agent that we looked at in the demo and add self-serve customer support, maybe hooked into your loyalty database where a user can check their loyalty points or status. You could, through that session, drive conversions at key moments, detect key moments, and then take a particular action. Again, looking over to the composable honeycomb, you could connect to real-time inventory and pricing systems and perhaps only recommend items that are in stock at a store near you. Mm-hmm. And all of this together, you can enable deeper user insights looking horizontally across all the chat sessions. So I'm going to hand it back over to Varun from here to walk us through how you would take all this and then work towards solution design for composable commerce.
Yes, perfect. And we were talking about this yesterday, right, Michael? I think we were using this analogy of a recipe and ingredients and the kitchen and the chef, right? So between Applied Digital and Netlify, if Applied Digital is the chef, right? Michael is the chef who's going to orchestrate this application and is going to build this. He needs key ingredients and he needs a kitchen where he can work with his team and kind of build out this awesome experience. So I'm going to kind of build up to how do we visualize composable moving into actual conversational commerce? What does that solution design look like? So the founding principles for just the basic architecture. I've done this. The last time I built one of these, it was put to test and it's been rolled out across 3 clients and it worked really, really well and it worked super fast. And we actually did this truly headlessly. But the idea is, how do you pick what is your reference architecture for this application, right? So in general, in Composable, we're looking at this shift from traditional monolithic, client server architecture to this Jamstack approach that really, was super helpful in moving towards Composable. And then Mock showed up and took that Jamstack and said front end and APIs and then the data layer. It's all still very much the same in Jamstack and Mock, but when you start to imagine your tech or your tech architecture or your solution design with these core constructs, I'll give you a visualization of something that I've kind of put into practice with a few clients. I think we've had a few logos that recently went live. They literally redid their entire commerce implementation. Tile Shop, you can go look up their case study. They were a speaker at Netlify Compose 2. I saw some recording about what they're seeing benefits, but their reference architecture resembled this, right? So what you see here is top to bottom, there's some key components of this architecture. If you take the front end, Netlify is your hosting provider and your solution provider for your sites and your build orchestration. But Netlify also offers a visual editor. So for that operator experience that is non-technical, you can actually enable WYSIWYG editing for any data source. So that gives you the ability to be truly headless, agnostic to any platform that may offer that visual editing. And then you get into this second tier where you're actually writing the code, right? This is where the chefs come in and they say, we're going to write a UI application. We're going to probably orchestrate some APIs. And then guess what? I want to add a RAG application. So if I build a RAG application, I can apply it to any site or app, and I'm able to reuse my UI, my APIs, and my RAG application across the board. Now, when you get down to one more layer, what you really need is a layer of abstraction that Netlify offers with Netlify extensions and Netlify Connect. Connect is where you can connect any data source and provide a GraphQL wrapper with a data model that you define that is more conducive to UI. So you're not doing point-to-point integration with any of these core providers like a CMS, DAM, PIM, e-commerce engine, or a customer service. And then you push the more heavier stack down below. So you have your UI that works really, really well. Whether it's a site or a storefront or a portal, you're able to build a composable solution with this mix, right? Now, if I dive a little bit deeper, I can actually say, how does this then give me the solution design for conversational commerce, right? So if I take those same building blocks and I move it to the next step, right? There are a lot of things that need to come together. If you're looking at the table on the left-hand side, you're looking at, you need to get, some NLP pipeline. You need a provider for a retrieval system. You need a generative model. You're going to, have some room in there for personalization, omni-channel data integration, user interface and interaction. You're going to see all these pieces. And what I've done is kind of map the reference architecture or their system components to what these capability requirements are. So you can check the box to say, okay, have I assembled my kitchen with all my, utensils and all my instruments that I need to actually be successful? For a lot of commerce customers who are already doing composable commerce, they already have a lot of this, right? Either on Azure or AWS or orchestrating it themselves, but they are doing a lot of this. But with Netlify, it becomes so much easier, cheaper, and faster. So what you see is, again, that storefront or a portal being the head application. Now you can add a React or Next.js or Angular or your preferred framework. You can add a RAG application UI that you build that then connects to Netlify extensions that gives you the glue to route that request, right? There are a few things that need to happen when it comes to a request or a query hitting that application, because one of the first things you want to do is, go and fetch some real-time data, external data to enable that retrieval system. And extensions can give you these snippets of code to go and execute a small task to say, okay, let me go execute this query. And then AWS Kendra is like similar to cognitive search, where you can kind of build out that retrieval system before you go to something like an OpenAI to actually, pick a model, right? But you're also maybe sending requests to Google or Bing to get more real-time context about what is publicly available. Because while you're trying to build your ontology and your domain model, and Kendra will understand that, there's always more context that is available on the web to get a better retrieval system going. But the important thing in this is when you start going down a little bit lower, like when you get down to Netlify Connect, Netlify is able to index all of the data from these systems and hold it in a cache, so you don't run into these query limits or ability to just have to endlessly query APIs to fetch data. So now you can actually run most of your queries decoupled, and those requests don't have to make it back to all of these sources of content. And we also added like blob storage or knowledge base or any of these. You can basically connect any data source to Netlify Connect. And then you have like CDP, APM, and all of those kind of give you the personalization aspect of it. So if you're a B2B customer and you have an account, I can go look you up in our ABM, get more context, then get some real-time data. And Kendra tells me, what is a sentiment, what is a retrieval query, and then you fetch the actual response, applying it the OpenAI. I mean, I'm just calling out OpenAI in this case, but whatever your preferred AI model is, you can hook it up. But the important thing here is really you are able to see where the operators fit in and where they update content. So as they're updating content, it is being indexed in Connect. That then, as requests come in, the queries come in, you get the most latest and greatest in terms of information. So when you want to know real-time inventory, through async workloads in Netlify, you're able to index that in near real time. So you can be as fast as your operators are in pushing that data and content. If you want to go live and Black Friday and you're noticing certain insights about where you're seeing more traffic and you want to launch a promo and you can do that in an hour, it just magically works, right? Because you're having near instantaneous content updates and your promotion updates, and you can apply that not just on your site, but you can make that promotion available in Conversation as well. So I'm going to pause here and feel free to throw a ton of questions about this in the chat. We'll answer all of them or as many of them as possible, but I'll hand it over to Michael to wrap us up with, well, how do we actually get started?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So I think covered a lot of ground, and I think that we can see that when you're working towards an AI implementation, there's a lot of steps to go through in the implementation process. But I think to get started, really, there's two things that you need. So first, and I'll keep the analogy going. So first you need great ingredients or a great product. So I think today we've kind of motivated why Composable and why modern AI-enabled products or ingredients like Netlify are a great choice. And the second thing you need is a partner or a chef, I guess, which can help you to articulate the right strategy, set the right strategy, find the right use cases, and then run the implementation process. And this is really the core of what we do at Apply. So with that, I think we can go over to some Q&A. I see a couple of the first questions coming in.
Certainly. And I was going to say, Michael, it doesn't hurt to have an MIT PhD as your chef. So you're definitely going to get the best of what Apply Digital has to offer.
It's all about having the right team. So first question here is, what are some of the broad guidelines you would recommend for teams thinking about using AI? I'm happy to jump in on this one. So I think in terms of guidelines, there's typically three things that we're thinking about. The first is finding a great use case that'll clearly drive value. And I think particularly for pilot projects, you want to make sure that they're delivering value clearly. The second is, these new AI technologies introduce kind of a different risk profile than technologies from the past. So it's not about avoiding those risks, but understanding them well and mitigating them appropriately. And then the third thing we're usually thinking about is how are we integrating, how are we keeping humans in the loop? How are we integrating AI into your existing business process to bring the best of what humans do, but unlocking further with the best of what AI can do?
Awesome. I see an awesome comment. It says, haven't heard RAG explained so clearly before. Thank you, Michael. So
awesome. Thank you.
I think we hit the mark.
Do we have time for a couple more questions? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Let me make sure.
There's one more on the most common challenges faced when developing new AI solutions. Do you want to take that one, or do you want me to?
Yeah, so some of the most common challenges faced in developing new AI solutions, please give it a shot and I'll add to it.
Yeah, so I think I think there's two types of common challenges that we usually face. So maybe one on the business side and one on the technical side. So on the business side, I think there's a challenge around, how do you identify a business use case that's well suited to be solved by AI? And then when you do, how do you ensure that you're picking the right AI technique to solve it? And then on the technical side, and this is speaking from personal experience, because the underlying technology is evolving so quickly, sometimes the builds are not always as stable as we would like. But the flip side to that, I think, is that's why it's important to find, like we said, the right products and the right partners who have scouted out ahead a little bit and cleared the path.
Yeah, and just to add to that, in my experience, I'll tell you, besides the technical bits and bytes, I think one of the key challenges we see is accuracy and relevance and getting that right. Accuracy of data and relevance of response. And how do you tune it to where, and this all kind of comes back to trust, right? How do you get your business or your executive team or your leadership team to buy into the notion that, yes, you know what, AI is going to work, and it's going to work the first time we do it. And that's a hard one to pull off, right? Most of us are just getting started with it, especially if you're doing generative AI. And if you've been doing AI for a while, then you're good to go, right? I'm sure you already have uncovered a lot of these. But if you're doing it for the first time now, and you're questioning, well, I don't know if I trust the output, and I don't know what the output is going to be, and I don't have the time to even test or validate, or the skills to validate my entire data set, and where do I get started? And I'll kind of give you a quick answer on this one too, because what has helped me in my experience in rolling these out has been that instead of kind of going direct to customer with your AI initiative and validating in market, it has always been helpful to get your data accuracy, your content accuracy, and the relevance geared towards your employees first. So whether that's your customer service organization, whether that's your sales organization, they may be the best first line of defense in validating what you have built actually solves a problem. And if they think they're getting the most relevant answers and the most accurate and real-time responses, they'll be the ones that be champions of moving this experience into the hands of customers. Now, I'm not saying that don't go customer first. I'm just saying that if you have that inertia, if you have that hesitancy in the organization, that may be a much better first step. Is if your employees have that trust in what you have built and it works, then it's a no-brainer to open it up to the customers. All right. I don't know. I have a question, maybe, Michael. This is more, my sort of background, and I'm curious if you're doing one of these projects today. Let's say you have a storefront today, right? You're doing either B2B, B2C. You have all the ingredients minus the Gen AI piece of it. What do you think is a typical time frame for rolling out a pilot? And however we define a pilot, right? Our first, let's even call it an alpha. What do you think is the average timeline in getting something like this off the ground?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think if all of your systems are already kind of set up and architected in a composable way, then we've gotten pilots and proofs of concept off the ground in weeks, if not days. But you're not talking about months. So you're able to really move quite quickly, getting these pilots and proofs of concept off the ground.
Cool. One more thing for me, I'm always curious because it's been, working in commerce, it's always this whole notion of B2B versus B2C is just completely different universes in how we build and orchestrate commerce. If you are starting with generative AI based, composable conversational search, where do you think is a much faster or higher ROI? Like, do you recommend it more for B2B or B2C? Where do you see less risk, more reward? Is there a thing, or it doesn't matter which model of commerce?
It's a great question. So I'm thinking about a recent project that I was on, and I guess I won't say where I think there's more ROI necessarily, but I'll just say, one interesting use case we found was that for companies that are B2B, these conversational agents and conversational commerce creates an opportunity for your business to get visibility into the end user. Whereas previously they may not have been able to collect as much information about how the end user is using their products because they have to go through a B2B channel. So I guess my overall answer would be it depends, and there's opportunity in both. But I think in both B2B and B2C, we're seeing organizations be able to leverage Gen AI and conversational commerce to unlock new insights that they wouldn't have been able to previously.
Oh, we got another question, and I like this one. Thank you for that, Michael. I think that it depends is really the answer here, right? It's just, but I love Matt's question here. How do you recommend evaluating whether the results given by conversational commerce agents are relevant once they are deployed out for use by customers? I have a little tidbit here, but I would love.
Why don't you start us off? Yeah, sounds great.
Well, the most important thing for me when I first built one of these out was effectively enabling citations. And what we built was we built a toggle feature in figuring out, well, if you are debugging and you're not ready to launch it, or if you're in the admin mode, you can turn on the toggle feature to see if you got a response for a particular query, what citations is your model offering? And in that, we actually enhance that to give us direct references, links to data sets or pages or other ways in which we can go actually validate, humanly validate if the response was real. So citations are your best friend, and your ability to be headless in building this gives you full control over it, versus buying something off the shelf that may not give you as much control over what you put in the UI, how you validate it, and what your citations look like. So that's my answer, but Michael, you feel free to correct me or.
No, I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
I guess we didn't talk about it much earlier, but the ability of these systems to give you the citation for the information is a key feature. One architectural point I would add on top is when you're designing these agents, we spoke briefly about how you can build them in a modular way. So I think what we found is, creating kind of an agent of agents where each of these sub agents has a very narrow set of responsibility, and so can be, much more easily and rigorously tested. We found this to be an effective way to make the final, the final recommendations and content in production much more robust and reliable.
All right. Well, I think we're at time. I think we have about 40 minutes here. So this is awesome. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Michael. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. And feel free to reach out to us, connect with us on LinkedIn, DM me if you have any more questions. I'll make sure I respond to every one of the comments that may come my way. Thank you all for your time. And this session, as it was recorded, it'll be put up on Netlify site, on Apply Digital. You're going to see about it on LinkedIn, so you'll get all the slides and the content that way as well. But thank you again all for attending, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.